The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
I am Emily Swallow, also known as the Armorer on The Mandalorian. And I'm just giving a little shout out to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast because this is the way.
Execute episode 66.
Execute Order 66. Now you will experience the full power of the dark side.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Jedi scum!
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
Hey everybody, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today we're beginning a series of character-devoted episodes as we are in the lull between new episodes of any upcoming Star Wars shows, and so we wanted to do something a little bit different than what we normally do, and we wanted to have some fun with this. So today we are going to be focused on the villain of the entire Skywalker saga. So villains are essential to any good story. They set up the conflict of the heroes and give us reasons to root for them. Frankly, they make stories more interesting and not boring. So we are going to be looking at the Dark Lord of the Sith himself tonight, Emperor Palpatine. And joining me...
Good.
Do it. Do it. Joining me on the panel tonight, first up, we do have Angela Ciolana, who did a very good impression of the Emperor.
Was it? I don't think it was. It was just having fun. Hello, everyone.
Second up, we have Mike Creevy.
By the way, everyone, when Father presented this idea to us, I think all of us were thinking deep down, do it.
Yes. And third and finally this evening is Andrew Hermes. Hello. So before we get into any discussion on Palpatine, though, there are just a couple of news things that I wanted to mention to you guys. First of all, of course, new year 2021, and with that came the end of The Mandalorian. So like I mentioned, there's kind of this lull in TV shows, but to kind of fill that lull in TV shows, Star Wars has launched the High Republic saga of storytelling. So this is a storyline that is set hundreds of years before episode 1, and it's a combination of books, novels, young adult books, kid books, comics, and they all are staying in that medium. And so it's the story of, this nefarious plot in the High Republic era. So I'm super excited about it. I've already picked up the books that were available early in January, and I'm starting to read through them. In fact, this is one of them. This is actually the kids' book, so it's got I'm showing it off to my co-host, but there's illustrations, and it's kind of fun. So are you guys interested in jumping into that? Have you picked up those books? Are you a fan of that realm of storytelling?
I do plan on reading the comic book. I'm hearing, good things about the actual book, the novel. Hearing some mixed things here and there, but mostly positive. So I haven't read a Star Wars novel in a long time, but I think if I'm invested enough into this High Republic storyline, I might dive into that one.
Yeah, I've heard really great things about Light of the Jedi. That if you are just looking for an avenue to just jump into Star Wars, period, that it's a really good place to start, because it even goes into what is the Force and what is a Jedi and just basics. So you don't have to be familiar with anything really. So I think that's pretty neat. So I'm definitely considering how and when I'm going to get into that, because I know eventually I will, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I told I was telling the guys before we started recording that I messed up again with my Libby library app and waited. So now like the wait on getting that is like 10, 12 weeks, something like that. So I'll just probably buy it. But the thing is, I'm a little hazy. I just saw this the other day, but I don't have it in front of me. Is it, again, High Republic, is this, they say, is it 200? I think 200 years?
Yes.
Before episode 1? Okay.
Yes.
Because early on, like the rumors, the rumor mill like a year or so ago was putting it more like 400. So I wasn't sure what they had settled on. So again, that's cool that you've got, Yoda will be around somewhere, but not center stage. So, you have some continuity there. So that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the aspects of the series that is appealing, is that these are all new characters minus Yoda, but you like all the characters that I've encountered so far in Light of the Jedi I've never met before. So it's a new story, new Jedi, really, kind of Jedi at their prime. And I mean, I hate to say this, but I am burnt out from the Skywalker saga. So to have a story that is isolated from that major plot is also really appealing to a lot of people right now. So hopefully, I'll have to talk to my co-hosts, and I would love to do a High Republic podcast episode somewhere down the line once we're free to talk spoilers and stuff of those books. And of course, we all have to read or pick up some of those stories. So we'll see what happens with that, but hopefully we can make something like that work. The other news thing that launched this past couple weeks was Lucasfilm Games was sort of relaunched. This is kind of a standover from LucasArts, which was the game division prior to the Disney purchase of Lucasfilm. So Lucasfilm Games is now, they've rebranded themselves, and they're going to be working with different companies and producing new Star Wars games going forward. So,
by the way, I hope this isn't like heresy or something, but within house of Lucasfilm, they're doing the Indiana Jones game that they're advertising now too, right?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm like ridiculously excited about that as well. So that's just good news all around.
Yeah. So go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was just going to say, as a fan of a lot of LucasArts games growing up, I kind of wish they kept the name LucasArts just for the nostalgia. Yeah. But, I'll take it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there's some good things there, rather than just going strictly with EA, which did Star Wars Squadrons. So this opens it up. Apparently, there's a new open world Star Wars game in development. So that should be a lot of fun too once that comes out. So lots of good things there as well. So we come to the point of the episode tonight. We're going to be talking about the Emperor himself. So before we jump into the Emperor Palpatine, I just want to point out that I've met Ian McDiarmid, and he is like the nicest guy you could ever meet. And he plays the most evil character imaginable. So the actor behind the evil is such a cool guy.
No, he's that's why he's so evil. He seems nice.
Yeah, he can play the sweet, grandfatherly side of Palpatine very well. So yeah, I think that definitely adds to the dual character, or the two sides of Palpatine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just to give a brief overview of the character, I'm going to read this from Wikipedia because I can't summarize this better than Wikipedia. So for those, of course, who kind of want a refresher on his huge story, this is it in a one paragraph summary. Darth Sidious, born Sheev Palpatine, and also known simply as the Emperor, was a human male Dark Lord of the Sith who reigned over the galaxy as Galactic Emperor of the First Galactic Empire, rising to power in the Galactic Senate as the Senator of Naboo. The manipulative Sith Lord cultivated two identities, Sidious and Palpatine, using both to further his political career. He masterminded the Clone Wars in order to gain dictatorial powers during the final years of the Galactic Republic. After the fall of the Jedi Order, Sidious established a reign lasting from roughly 19 years before the Battle of Yavin until his seemingly demise in 4 years after the Battle of Yavin. So episode 4. Death was not the end for Sidious, however, as the dark side of the Force was a pathway to abilities that made his return possible. And of course, that story is played out in The Rise of Skywalker, where he ultimately ends with Rey. What makes him such a good villain is the first question to throw out there.
I would say that it's because he is just evil, and there's nothing, at the beginning of Star Wars, George Lucas made it very black and white, which was very much based on like the serial series that, he watched as a kid that he wanted to make Star Wars into. And in those shows, it was like, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, good guy, bad guy, they fight, and in the end, the good guy wins. So it was always clear that Palpatine was evil, and there was no backstory to kind of like humanize him or anything like that. We didn't know like his struggles as a young person or whatever. Like, we kind of knew where he came from, and more or less like sort of like a just enough to kind of make him a character. But otherwise it was just he's that evil guy in the hood, and he had that guttural kind of voice, and wrinkly and disfigured, and obviously everything that we associate with being evil.
The voice too wasn't the original plan. I heard, so because they had the was it I think it was Irvin Kershner's wife that they put in makeup, like to put in Empire Strikes Back to stand in and everything, and it was just so weird looking. I still remember what that looked like, and I'm sure you guys do too. And people who don't, you can go back on YouTube and see those comparison videos where you see what the original like hologram of the Emperor looked like the first time you saw him. But then when it rolls around and it's him, I think he was only like 38 or 39 or something when they made Return of the Jedi, or I think he was under 40. And what's so funny is he's so decrepit looking. Like, I've always wondered like how, like, clearly like Lucas was like really opening up any possibility, for the next 40 years, that they would maybe be able to fit him back in. But the voice he adopted, I don't remember, it was in a documentary I saw, and I didn't write this down, but I just remember he said something about like, that wasn't the voice that they originally had in mind, and that like Ian kind of worked on that. And I don't recall ever hearing what it was based on or anything, but it just has a real sinister, cackling kind of attribute to it,
So it was based on, originally he was supposed to have a deeper voice than Darth Vader. But Ian McDiarmid actually used this Japanese theater technique to project from your stomach, and that's what gave it that that voice that we know today.
Well, and what's crazy about the actor is, when you just think about it, when he acted in episodes 4, 5, and 6, he then went and portrayed Palpatine as a younger man in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then goes back to portray him as an even older,
like 120
clone. Like, as an actor, he got to play his character from like this vast array of years, which is just kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's part of what makes him such a good villain, and it's that the scope of his evil, his villainy, is almost as big as the scope of Star Wars, because he kind of crosses all the movies and the animated series, and he's the puppet master. He's when you think of the greatest villains, like in movies in general, you think of him, you think of obviously Darth Vader, and you think of like the Joker. He's like the opposite of the Joker. The Joker is like, like, oh, do I look like a guy with a plan? Like this guy had like the plan, like, and that's what makes him so amazing. And, for me personally, I go back and forth between him and Darth Vader as like my favorite characters, period, in Star Wars. I think after Rise of Skywalker, it's definitively Vader. But but Palpatine, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I know we'll get into like all his like, greatest moments and stuff, but if you think about what he accomplished and how he did it, I mean, he was the one, seemingly the only one that realized like where the Jedi were falling short and really took advantage of their weaknesses and their hubris and and pitted it against them and took their one, literally the chosen one, and took that person, took Anakin and totally turned him against, the Jedi Order and made himself the only person he could trust. And after Padme dying, there was no one that saw any good in Anakin anymore. So he kind of accomplished that, that feat and changed the course of, the galaxy. It really, I mean, he did it with politics. He did it with, manipulating, good people. He did it through, even violence. I mean, one of the coolest scenes was finally getting to see him fight Yoda, in the Senate, and he encompasses everything you would want in a villain, and that's why I think that, and again, for one actor to kind of portray him through all of it, and to be such a definitive voice, plays a big part in that, because gosh, when we heard his laugh in the trailer for Rise of Skywalker, I mean, that kind of rocked everyone's socks off, and yeah, he's one more. I mean, I know we're gonna get into it, but he really is like the guy that was pulling all the strings and the one that ultimately needed to be defeated to finally have a true victory and to move forward.
I've always heard it said, in fact, I'm pretty sure my 9th grade English teacher, Mrs. Bullock, liked to say this, but she would basically say something to the effect of, a good villain is one you love to hate. And I think that just encapsulates Emperor Palpatine, and partly because there is no room for sympathy for his character. Like you were mentioning, Angela, there's we have no reason to know or to even think that he had this struggle and wanted to do the right thing, but just fell into the wrong crowd, and there's no buildup of sympathy for his character. He's just this evil character, and we've never seen him in any role except for evil and manipulative and everything. So he's one that I think that we love to hate, because we know he's wrong as kind of the audience, and we see his own hate destroying everything around him. In fact, I mean, his hate is what ultimately is what disfigures his own body. And then it's such a triumph when Darth Vader is redeemed and throws him down the reactor shaft, which didn't kill him, but it effectively did for 30 some years.
It was on the plan. He even had a plan for that. It's like, okay, if I die, or if I appear to die,
which is interesting,
what's going to happen.
just to point this out, I know that, I mean, the original plan was not necessarily to bring Palpatine back into the sequel trilogy, but if you pick up the novel for the Rise of Skywalker Expanded Edition, there's this really interesting scene, and I had looked it up prior to coming tonight, was when Rey and Palpatine are facing off on Exegol. There's a point in the novel where it relates that she and Palpatine are so close, and the Force emanating from Palpatine is so strong that she actually picks up some of his memories and relates them in the novel. And so what's interesting about that is that one of the memories that she pulls is him falling down that reactor shaft, and it relates how basically, I'm just going to read just a little bit of it because it's kind of fun. So he's relating that he's falling. So falling down a massive shaft, the betrayal sharp and stinging, a figure high above, black clad and helmeted and shrinking fast. His very own apprentice had turned against him the way he himself had turned against Plagueis, whose secret to immortality he had stolen. So it's implied there, that's the end of the quote that I was going to read, but it's implied there that, of course, he's connecting it back to his own master, Darth Plagueis, who is referenced in Revenge of the Sith. But the fact of his ability to transfer his consciousness into a clone as a way to achieve immortality is also something that he picked up from Darth Plagueis. So not just the ability to manipulate midichlorians to create life, but also this transfer of consciousness is linked all the way back to Darth Plagueis.
I'd like to just for a sec riff off that a little bit, because I was actually going to bring up related to a couple things that have been said here. And I understand that Darth Plagueis, James Luceno's novel, is not canon. However, it should be, and it almost would have been. I think in the grand scheme of the timing of the Disney takeover and everything, the reason I bring it up is without ruining the plot of it. Going into it, I was curious about a lot of things we've been talking about. Like, is this going to be like, he's just the kid who no one understood? You know what I mean? Like, because that's going to dull his character, because basically he's the devil. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, it is just, just like everything you guys said. And I got to say, I remember, like, I listen to audiobooks a lot when I'm just going around doing stuff. And I actually remember where I was at a lot of times when a particular part of a book, I don't know if everyone's like that, but it sticks in my head years later sometimes. So I was at the grocery store, and I was at the grocery store where there's this scene early on. It's really the first, I'm trying not to be specific with it in case anyone hasn't read it, but it's you've encountered his character. I mean, the book's about Darth Plagueis, but obviously it starts to very much involve him not too far into it. And he's young, and Plagueis is seeing him as someone potentially to shape. And he has, and you have a little bit of that. Like, you kind of see, like, okay, he seems like a pretty all right kid, but it's not too, like, you really like him. But he does seem, just kind of somewhat, ordinary. And then this moment comes where he exercises his power for the first time and really takes a human life for the first time. I won't say who it is or anything. And it is creepy because as he's doing it, he drops the veil. He's like 17 and he drops the veil and he says something in there about like being like this, this beast of darkness kind of, and it's just like, oh, okay. And the idea that, this is decades before episode 1 and he's already who he is. And he's already, and what's so cool about that book is as you go through, and this isn't really a big surprise if you know his character, that book is mostly about him playing Plagueis, for decades. And supposedly, like, with a mastermind Darth Plagueis, like, he knows stuff, but the whole time, it's like Palpatine's a little leech, it's like he already has his plan. And it's just like, I thought it was so well done. And then for me, it's, as you say a lot of times, Father, headcanon. I'm like, nope, that's him.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, and it's just, yeah.
And to alleviate your own thoughts there, my thought is as long as it doesn't contradict canon, it can totally be canon. So yeah, that is totally one of those books that nothing in canon contradicts it. So yeah, feel free to make it headcanon.
Yeah. Playing off of what you were saying, well, first of all, do y'all have pet names for Emperor Palpatine? Because I do. Like, Sheev, or Palps,
I try to avoid using Sheev, but Palp.
Yeah, Palpy. Palpy's one for sure.
Palpy. Usually Palpy is what I go with. But but anyway, he plays a long game. Like, that's one of the interesting things about him, I think. I think that's something that Star Wars fans really like. I mean, we like the cool looking guys, but we also just like the people that are really conniving and like, manipulative and they have a plan. Like, everything is in this master plan, And one of the things that's interesting to me about that is so often Palpatine talks about having patience and, from a Christian theological perspective, like patience, that's like when St. Paul is talking about love and he's describing love, he talks about patience, like love is patient. And I was trying to wrestle with like, why, like, how does that jive with, Palpatine? Like, who is super evil. Like there's no loving bone in his body, or whatever, clone body. So, I mean, what would you guys say to that? Like, how does the whole like patience thing like really kind of, or is it just sort of this anomaly in the whole, like it's not a Christian, like, I guess work, Star Wars. So I don't know. I just want to get your take on that.
I would say that it's not how St. Paul is referring to how love is patient, but I would say it's because of his own love of power that he is patient, because he's pursuing that.
It's self-interest. Right.
So it's love, but it's the twisted love. It's the obsessive self-love, or for him, it's the obsessive love of power and control. And so in that sense, his love is patient, but that's not the Christian way to look at it for sure. So
yeah, he's obviously a big picture guy. He even like he doesn't even care about surface level dark side powers. I mean, this guy is all about like I know the secret. Like we were talking about, like he knows Darth Plagueis' secret to immortality, and he always teases Anakin with like, oh, I can teach you powers that you can only dream of, and bring back people to life. So he is not. You can take any villain in Star Wars canon. I think he'll blow anyone out of the water when it comes to just wanting to have like ultimate power and being the ultimate evil, and willing to go to the deepest, darkest depths of wherever he has to go to get it. And yeah, I mean, you can call it, some love of power, or just being, blind with passion for for achieving his own self-interest. And then and that's also what makes him such a interesting character, and your curiosity is always like on level 10 whenever there's a scene involving him, because you're like, okay, what is every word he says like means something, and everything he says is either a hint towards his ultimate plan, or it's something where like, yeah, we know he's not saying the truth here. What is he really trying to get at? Whether he's manipulating Anakin or whatever. And he says like the most powerful 3 words in all of Star Wars: execute Order 66. And with those words, and within a few minutes, you wipe out almost this whole Jedi Order. Effectively, I mean, that is just
across the galaxy.
You have to give across the galaxy. Exactly. I mean, you got to give him credit.
I think it's a determination, right? Like there's a resoluteness there, which is rooted, I think, in the primarily the will, and there's a real, I think that it's neat because the analog here with Satan. And I tell my students this all the time, when not all the time, we don't only talk about the devil in my class, but we do, because there's some things they need to know. And we talk about, it comes up from time to time, any given year, when this happens, but usually there's a point where I get into this conversation with them where I kind of ask them about like the most intelligent sort of creature that God ever made. And, you see that a lot of them, Jesus, I'm like, it's not a creature. Like there's so many catechetical things. Like, okay. It's like, I'm making notes like, this is going to be fun. But, usually they're like, hey, Mary, and I'm like, no, the devil, and you see them like, what? And we get into this conversation about, intellect detached, like intellect willingly detached from love is the most dangerous thing there is, because it's not, knowledge is power. And I'm always like, well, not in a good way, like just knowing stuff, just having a plan, just really, I've got the will. It's like, what won't you do, if it's just about willpower? And that's why I love like, so in that sense, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later because I'll just share it now. My favorite scene, I think, with him probably is the opera scene.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a masterpiece. And I won't, but just the one little thing in particular, when Anakin, like he's poking a little bit, and Anakin tries to, quote the Jedi line, we only care about others and everything. And he like looks away angrily. And Palpatine just kind of looks there and just kind of grins a little bit, like he almost relishes it. Like he is in no way unsure of where this is going to go. Like he doesn't doubt himself at all. He's enjoying like the opportunity to shift tactics a little bit. It's like he's playing with them, and it's just creepy. And that was one of the things I put down. What makes a good villain? I think when they're scary, and he's scary. And Andrew mentioned the Joker earlier. I've said this before. Like it's neat how many ways that can manifest. Because I think like Heath Ledger's Joker, I've often said, is like something that you're scared of finding under your bed. Like he's just really creepy. But then Bane, in the next movie wasn't like that. He's like, you see him coming a mile away and like you can't stop him because he's just going to roll over you scary. And that's what with Palpatine, it's this far more insidious, and that's, I have no doubt why he's Darth Sidious. This insidious, like he's going to find a way to do what he wants to do. And I think that's the patience thing there. It's just, we'll find a way to achieve what we want. It has nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong,
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I mean, that's how Satan operates too. I mean, especially if you are lukewarm in your own faith and thoughts. I mean, he'll just kind of bide his time, knowing that he can throw temptations at you, and play a longer game if you're gonna succumb to that. And yeah, so the direct correlation there with Satan, I think, is very apparent and prominent. Still not necessarily the way that St. Paul would like patience to play out, but
oh, definitely.
But
I had no impression that was in any way
like you're not going to see
correlation.
like a cross-stitched Christian pillow with Palpatine. Like Palpatine is patient. Palpatine is like no. Does not brood over injury. I think he does. Clearly he does.
But it's also important to note that, I mean, especially as we're talking about the bad and the villainous of Palpatine, but and even as it relates to Satan, it's important to know these things, because it's exactly, I mean, we're fighting the spiritual battle in our own lives with Satan. So to know how Satan operates helps us to resist and to stay on track with what is good and what is right, and follow what is follow Jesus and not succumb to that. So villains are also important in that they show us what happens when you do the wrong. And I mean, so they have lessons for us in that, and we'll get into some of those as well. So yeah, so he's a good character. I wanted to get into a little bit of just his personality and psychology, because we keep talking about it. So I mean, nothing here is really new by any means. But I had found an article. There was a blog that was talking about it, but there's also an article from the Journal of Research and Personality looks like it was coming from Vancouver, but it was talking about the Dark Triad of Personality. And so it listed three qualities that consist what they call the Dark Triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So for just to kind of lay what those out in more layman's terms, narcissism is, the view of you're thinking only about yourself. It's you desire what is grandiose, self-promotion, attention-seeking kind of behavior, all based on yourself. You're self-focused. Machiavellianism is a trait that is essentially that of someone who manipulates others. And then psychopathy, and I'm being overly simplistic with these, and this is all psychology that's over my head, but kind of the simplest way to look at that is someone who completely lacks empathy and doesn't feel for others. And so this blog had kind of applied those all to Palpatine, and how he essentially, has all three of those, and that it really makes him, this huge villain. And we've already kind of talked about it, that he is the master manipulator. He's, pulling all the strings. He's manipulating Anakin. He's controlling both sides of the Clone Wars to ensure his own rise to power, not only to become Supreme Chancellor in the first episode 1, but also to become ultimately the Emperor at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But even like we see him play that with every character that he encounters. We see it in the Rebels finale where he's trying to manipulate Ezra and get him to join his family and not ultimately defeat Thrawn in that moment. He's also, of course, narcissist. I mean, he's doing all of this for his own power and glory, and he's, drawing attention to the fact that he is planning all of this. And then, of course, his obvious lack of empathy. And perhaps Order 66 is maybe one of the biggest examples of that. But even when he tells Anakin to go kill the younglings, and I think it was that scene, but I'm pretty sure it was, because he says, show no mercy and just go and kill and destroy. So I just found it interesting that in fact in psychology they're called these 3 traits are called the Dark Triad.
Yeah, it's cool that you bring that up, because something that I learned right before we started recording is that Ian McDiarmid actually got a master's degree in clinical psychology. And so I wanted to know what he thought. What he thought about Palpatine's psychology. And I found this quote from Ian McDiarmid that he said, "I like the notion that he didn't have any psychological subtlety or depth, that he was just solidly evil, and the dirtiest word in his vocabulary was friend." I thought that was terrific.
Well, that's an interesting point, too, because I had written down that exchange. I didn't really know where it fit in the discussion tonight, but I was thinking of in Return of the Jedi, when Vader gives him the lightsaber, he's talking about it, and he's walking up, talking about the plan and everything. And Luke says, your overconfidence is your weakness. And he just spins around without missing anything and says, your faith in your friends is yours. And I find it interesting that, Luke tries that shot, which just bounces off him. But the idea that to him, trust, faith, friendship, anything outside of yourself is a weakness. That's like his most core thing. That's like that. I just thought that's interesting that that's what he spits out right there. Seems to reflect that.
Yeah, he's the voice of the dark side, right? I mean, he is how we get to know what the dark side is. And anytime that someone has to make a choice for the light side against the dark side, it's like making a choice against like just Palpatine, really, like, just the essence of Palpatine and Palpatine's gospel, and so, yeah, I mean, even like what you were talking about with Ezra, it was Ezra's family that was his quote unquote weakness, and I think that ultimately what I see in him, and maybe I want to like kind of go with the sort of the flow of the structure of these character profile episodes that we're doing. But I know one thing that we wanted to talk about was the lessons. So is that
Yep. That's kind of next on the list anyway. Go for it.
Yeah. So like with lessons, I think about how like Palpatine teaches me constantly that, he plays on people's fears a lot of times. Like Anakin was so afraid for his bride, that something would happen to her, and he was afraid. He had this connection with his mother, so that was all like that was all things. Those were things that Palpatine capitalized on with people, and he is the ultimate abuser. Like we talk about manipulation, but abuser is really like a term that I think is sort of relevant for today, that, when someone is abusive, like they are looking for those points of, fear or whatever it is, your weaknesses. And and isolates you, makes you feel like you're alone. You know, that was a big theme in episode 9, like that Poe really kind of, I think, vocalized that, you know, we are not alone, but they want us to feel like we're alone. And then when you're alone and you feel like you don't have any other options, I think that was kind of part of Anakin's downfall. You know, we don't really talk about that too much, but I really think that he felt like he didn't have any other options. And so he chose the dark side because he thought that it was the answer to his problems, and that, you know, the way that he could help people. But ultimately, when you make a choice based on your fears, then that is never going to be the best choice.
I think the balance between looking at community and isolation are absolutely key here. And Palpatine, I mean, essentially embodies what it's like to be alone, you know, and when you're alone and you don't have friends, the closest friend, quote unquote, that he may have had would have been Darth Vader, but he wasn't even a friend. And of course, Darth Vader turns on him. But what's powerful is community and being united to one another. And yeah, I actually really appreciate that. I watched a bit of Rise of Skywalker this evening, and it's also reflected in when Rey is able to defeat Palpatine, when she has all the Jedi, you know, speak to her, and she says, you know, he says, I am all the Sith, and she says, you know, I am all the Jedi, and is able to overcome his Force lightning. You know, like, that's where strength comes. And I mean, that's so Christian too. Like, we are stronger as a united body of Christ, and Satan wants to make us feel isolated and pull us apart from one another. And I think we mentioned it before that that's diabolical. You know, that's in the Greek to throw apart. That what Satan does is he wants to separate and isolate, because then, exactly your point, when you're isolated, you act out of fear, and you act irrationally, or, you know, and you make choices that are not what's beneficial for everyone. So I fully agree. I think Palpatine teaches us, like, this is what happens if you follow that route to its ultimate conclusion, is that it's, I mean, he embodies it physically. I mean, he just looks, I mean, he's meant to look creepy, of course, but it's also, I mean, it's disgusting to a point. You know, even Rise of Skywalker, he's disfigured, and, you know, and that's kind of a physical manifestation of, like, the spiritual aspect of what's going on, is that he himself has, you know, suffered that same sort of disfigurement interiorly. So yeah, so there's lots to learn there. And of course, he has no joy. I mean, the joy is found in the community. Christian joy.
The only time I disagree with you on that a little bit is he really looked like he was having fun throwing those pods and send it down.
That's why I have to say joy, not
that's true. Yeah.
Not happiness.
He's like that nasty little kid on the playground, you know, just like throwing bark or stones,
or like the
something.
Force lightning,
right.
You know.
Well, you remember,
he loves to laugh.
He does.
Yeah, his laugh is iconic.
He's a very jolly.
I think the you know, the biggest lessons that at least that I learned is, you know, learn what to do when a guy like Palpatine, you know, tries to seduce you. You know, I mean, first of all, I mean, you learn these lessons as much from, like, the Jedi and from Anakin and as you do from Palpatine. It's like, okay, where did they fall short? Where did Obi-Wan fall short? As they let a guy like this, you know, who's just, you know, throwing out, you know, ideas of power and of, like, being able to resurrect people from the dead. And, you know, you can boil that down to anything. I mean, if some sort of influential person comes into your life and all that they have to offer is, like, stuff that's either materialistic or stuff that's going to hype up your ego or something like that, then they probably don't have the best of intentions. They're probably only looking out for themselves. And yeah, it just shows you that even someone as or a group of people like the Jedi, you can relate it to, you know, your community. You can relate it to the, you know, the Catholics all over the world as a whole. I mean, there are moments where, you know, we fall short, and we fall short usually because of, you know, not because of one person, but maybe because of some societal, you know, thing that has to do ultimately with our pride, right? So, yeah, and again, I think that's what makes him just pure evil, is because he and the devil should have that in common. So, yeah, I think to have a villain like that, to be a symbol of that sort of, you know, evil is like what makes him such a great villain, and one that, you know, will stand the test of time.
Yeah, I was trying to think how do you phrase this question I have in my mind, but one of the things that Palpatine does is he gives promises of, and especially when he was trying to like climb the ladder in the Galactic Senate, he talked a lot about wanting peace, and then, you know, we know that the Empire often would use this excuse of achieving peace and order as sort of, you know, the reason for their awful choices. So it's I guess that's another lesson, but I'm not sure how to exactly word it. But just that, I guess power and power. We think of power often at times as like dominance over others, and that's a quick and easy way to sort of like achieve, you know, an answer to a problem or whatever. But oftentimes, that's really not, you know, what is needed. You know, that what is needed, I guess, like in order to have true and lasting peace is to like have unity, right? Mm-hmm. And to have like mutual understanding. And that takes more than just quick and easy, you know, dominance. It takes a lot of hard work, you know, and communal interaction. So, yeah, just another thought.
Well, and peace is not just the absence of war.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah, I was, as you were talking, I was just thinking of the phrase absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, and he embodies that. And you know, someone like him, he's saying what people want to hear. Like he's, you know, when he's promoting, wants to find peace. He doesn't mean it. I mean, and we know that, but of course the characters don't. Mm-hmm. You know, but that's again goes back to his manipulative personality.
And how cool would it have been, you know, if we had gotten the prequels first and we didn't know he was, you know, a bad guy. They could have really played that really well. You know, if they still did like 9 movies, man, to have a villain like that. But yeah, because the whole time we're like, oh my gosh, like, come on, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. And everyone falls for it. And
well, that made the prequels almost like a Shakespeare tragedy. Like we knew it was going to this point. And it's like, I mean, you couldn't not watch it. You know, I was watching a bit of Revenge of the Sith too. And I found it interesting how many just little points of humor that they throw into that movie because it's so dark, you know, and it had to be, but it was just like, we know where this wreck is going, but you gotta see it through, because we know where it ultimately goes, and evil is ultimately defeated, as it always is. It would have been quite the surprise though to like, oh, that the nice senator from Naboo.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the other thing that I wanted to throw out. This one, just kind of what's your favorite qualities of this particular character? And I I guess I'll preface this that this one, it can be as off the wall as you want, because, you know, I don't entirely suspect that we're going to find his evil characteristics our favorite. So, what do you guys like best about Palpatine?
His style of humility later in life, and hold on, let me explain. his robes near the end of the prequels. I'm literally just coming up with this off the top of my head because everything else I had down we already talked about. His robes at the end of the prequels were a little more ornate. If you look, there's some little bit more to him. But, you know, by the time he gets to Return of the Jedi, he's just the simple black one with that little brooch. You know, that's not too fancy. Well, actually, no. Now I correct myself, because then the ones he's wearing in Rise of Skywalker are more regal, and I think they're even like reddish. So I don't know. I don't really know what I'm talking about. The voice was the main thing. His voice was always the main thing about him. I get the same reaction every time I hear it.
Yeah, I was gonna say his voice, and he's just so like quotable. I mean, he's one of the most quotable like just characters in movie history. You know, whenever I'm in like a group chat with some friends, I often find many opportunities to find like a Palpatine GIF to to send in, because usually you can find one that applies to almost any conversation.
Well, anytime someone has to do something,
do it. Do it. Unlimited power. Yeah, there's just so many things, so many quotes and sayings, and his laugh, and it's like that's another thing too. Is like he has transcended, obviously, his the movies. He's part of pop culture, and as is like Darth Vader and all the other iconic villains in movie history. But at the same time, we can talk about how evil he is, and then at the same time how funny his character is at times, and how we can sort of laugh about him, and he can be like this sort of pop culture icon.
One thing before I forget, because it's something Andrew said, one thing that you can't quote him on because it's too creepy is like and I mentioned this, he does it a few times, especially when he's talking to Anakin, but that really like creepy, like, almost like he's really relishing and like enjoying and devouring and sort of like feeding on the dark side thing. He's like, I'd like to hear, he's like, are you going to kill me? And he's like, I certainly like to. He's like, I know you would, that. So I tried that once, like someone's going to the store. If someone's like, you're going to go to the store, or like, yeah, exactly. Someone's like, I'd like to go to the store. I'm like, I know you would. It's a little over the top. But that's so gross. He's creepy.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it for me. The quotes, just the fact that we get to see him sort of become what he is, in a way. And also, I think one of the things that I very much enjoy about his character is the throne, and just like sitting on the throne and just observing everything, like just in how he enjoys himself and like his superiority, like so much. It's just, I don't know, there's just something, it's kind of like what you were saying, like how you just love to hate, like, yeah.
Well, do you remember Kylo spinning on it on the Lego special, like the holiday special we just watched?
Yeah.
And he's like coaching him through it, and he's like, it's spinning. You're like,
oh, best emperor in the galaxy. My favorite quality of him is I love his ability to use Force lightning, and just kind of in a general sense. And I think part of it is I mean, so Rise of Skywalker, when he like is able to shoot lightning into the sky and like disable all the ships, is just like really cool. But also, I think for me that harkens back to like playing some of the Star Wars video games, like Jedi Outcast, where you could learn Force abilities, and I really like to learn Force lightning to take out the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
So
I used it a lot.
Yeah. So that'd be my favorite quality about him. And then kind of our last little section is, what is your favorite moment? And we've sort of possibly already talked about this, but let's share them again if you got them.
For me, I would say, I wasn't sure about this, but then I rewatched episode 9, And I know people have a lot of issues with that movie, but Andrew, but and this could be like a Rey moment too. But I really I don't know why I didn't remember this particular moment as much, but watching it when she is encountering him on Exegol and she's talking to him and he is really trying to get to her. And she says, all that you want is for me to hate, but I won't, not even you. And he says, weak like your parents. So I don't know. I think ultimately, I think that's probably my favorite Palpatine moment because it's so epitomizes what his character is about. That she's saying, all you want for me to do is to hate you. And throughout the movie, she is really kind of fighting that because she realizes what he did to her parents and everything. And that is the source of her pain, right? That's a key part of Rey's character. But ultimately, I think to me, that kind of just speaks to Palpatine ultimately doesn't have power. I guess that moment kind of reminds me, ultimately Satan, doesn't have power over me. No matter how hard, Satan could try, to get at me, ultimately it's my choice. So I really liked that moment. And I'm going to say that that's my favorite Palpatine moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I already kind of, I mentioned it a little bit, but the opera scene in Revenge of the Sith, but specifically the temptation aspect of, that's what the whole scene's about, but really the way he goes about it, and if I had to pick one particular part of it, it's and it's hard to pick one particular part, but the way when he goes into the Darth Plagueis the Wise story, the way it's chummy. And he had such a knowledge of the dark side. It's this, oh man, it's I caught a fish last week. It's the idea of the normalizing of evil, when evil is just evil and it will destroy you, and you need to completely resist the devil and he'll flee from you. Your enemies prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And there's even an old, I forget what it was. There's an old, folktale type thing about, I forget all the details, but it's the kid's, on the mountain and he needs help and there's a rattlesnake, and he's hesitant to listen to it, but he finally listens. And it's this whole thing where it's helping him all along the way. And when they're finally free of whatever the conflict was, I forget it if I'm butchering this, and it bites him, and he's dying. And he's like, why would you do it? And it's you knew what I was the moment you saw me. That idea of that long play. And that's he's this viper, and he's just sitting there and coiling around Anakin, and it's Anakin, you should leave right now. It's somewhere in you, something in you is telling you this is off. He's driving a wedge between you and Obi-Wan. It's the dividing. Well, I'm not really trusting them. Why did they ask you to do something? It's and it's so So I that scene is just such a masterpiece.
Yeah, that's a great scene. I mentioned, his battle with Yoda was pretty awesome. That's up there for me. The scene, the scene where he ultimately lies to Anakin, which puts the final, nail in the coffin, and he goes from Anakin to Darth Vader when he tells him that it seems in your anger you killed her, that moment there, and then we get the classic no. I love that for many different reasons, but by
the way, have you ever seen that in other languages? Because it's actually better. It's better. It's in Spanish. It's really better, and in French, it's something about them trying to ape the James Earl Jones. I don't know.
It's that scene is the gift that keeps on giving, for sure. But yeah, that scene, ultimately, because the end of that movie, it's so soul crushing, and it's so like tragic. It's tragically beautiful. I mean, the ending of that film, and that scene, you know, right there is like you just get all of Palpatine in like those few moments. It's like he got what he wanted. You know, he has Anakin, and he just, you know, Anakin has one, you know, probably his last, you know, line as Anakin, you know, when he's asking about Padme, and then with him lying to him, you know, just totally, you know, Palpatine risked his own life because Vader almost, killed everyone in that room, right? You know, it just shows like how far he was willing to go, and how his plan came to be, and it just encapsulated everything he was working towards.
Yeah. So for my favorite moment, then I'm going to go on the flip side of that his demise at the end of Return of the Jedi, you know, and where he's, and because it's pivotal for Anakin and Darth Vader's characters, you know, when Palpatine is using his Force lightning to just attack Luke, and you can see the visible battle going on within Vader of, you know, do I save my son or do I stick with the Emperor? And then he picks him up and throws him down the reactor shaft. So, and that was, so that was just a huge moment for Vader. I also just really love lightsaber battles, so I would also say that his battle with Yoda, especially when like he's throwing the Senate pod things at Yoda. It's an awesome scene.
And I sent everybody in the group here earlier the meme, you know, the shooting stars meme that was so popular a few years ago. I still can't get over it when he does the corkscrew thing at the Mace Windu and all of them, and it's just him corkscrewing through space, and it concludes with him taking out Hosnian Prime. So it's, you know, so go if you haven't seen it, just Shooting Stars Palpatine. It's a good minute and a half.
It really is.
Any other final observations on Palpatine that you guys would like to point out or share?
He's the best worst. I don't know how to say it. He's the worst.
I think that's a great way to say it.
He literally like sucks the life out of Ben and Rey at the end of 9. Like I don't know. I just thought that was so awesome, but also like creepy and gross, and just like very consistent with who he is. Like just literally sucking the life out of you.
Yep.
So yeah. Amazing character.
Yeah, and my only thing is like I don't hope for seeing that character come up again. You know, obviously I think it's time to move on, and he's had his time, but I wonder if you know, I wouldn't mind like if you know, eventually we're gonna get some sort of, you know, films or TV shows set, you know, after the Rise of Skywalker. So I wonder if any villains, you know, in those movies or shows will you know, kind of like Kylo, who used Darth Vader as his idol, might look to Palpatine as theirs, and, you know, maybe get a few nods, and maybe you know, maybe a few little tidbits more, you know, about his character's mythology.
I want to get more into and we'll see where this goes, but actually the Acolyte, the TV show that's coming, could potentially tie into the rise of Palpatine. So there's definitely, I think, some of that maybe coming, but not him in the spotlight quite like he's been, and I think that's just fine. So that is going to be it for our discussion on Palpatine. We've got a few other things to mention before we officially wrap up. The first thing is that we have a raffle winner for the official Art of Mandalorian Season 1 book. We did a random drawing of all of you listeners who sent us an email, and our winner is Lorenza M. So congratulations, Lorenza, and thank you for listening to us and to the show, and stay tuned, as I'm sure in the future we're going to have more raffles and prizes to give away as certain holidays and stuff come up. So thanks for listening, and I will send out the Art of the Mandalorian Season 1 book this coming week. So look for that soon.
Do you guys have that, by the way? I got it for Christmas. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's really awesome. Yeah.
There's one. Yep. I want to say there's one coming for season 2 as well, and the art books of anything, whether it's Star Wars or other fandoms, they're phenomenal. So this is a really cool book to add to your collection. We also got an email from Lee D, who said, hi guys, I was finally able to catch up on season 2 of The Mandalorian, as well as your podcast reviews. Amazing job, insightful and entertaining as always. I was, however, a little disappointed that the TIE launching sequence from this episode was totally overlooked as a homage to Katie Sackhoff's portrayal of Starbuck on Sci-Fi's Battlestar Galactica from back in the early 2000s. Totally a Viper launching from the hangar deck. Keep up the great work. So, I have not ever seen Battlestar Galactica. I knew that she was in it, I'll claim ignorance on that one, but
I had definitely heard about that reference, but since I haven't watched Battlestar Galactica, I didn't mention it.
My brother would be irritated with me because he does love Battlestar Galactica, so I should probably pick it up.
Well, now I'm ashamed because my brother and I did a binge, a couple years back, so I should have thought of that.
It's Mike's fault.
Yeah, it's totally my fault. I'll take that.
Cool. Well, that is it from us. Listeners, what are your thoughts and opinions on Emperor Palpatine? Definitely let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that he was a good villain? And just in general, what were your thoughts on Palpatine? You can comment on our Facebook or Twitter page and let us know. You can send us an email, and that email address is starwars@sqpn.com. And you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. And as always, we would like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Bruno C., Andres W., Michael R., Matthew K., and Teresa H. Now is definitely a great time to become a Star Wars patron if you are not already one. Thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter when you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give. The first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you become a new patron at $10 per month, after 3 months, our donor will give $30 to StarQuest to support all of our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. So if you've at all been thinking about becoming a StarQuest patron, now is definitely the time. And visit sqpn.com/give today to become a patron. Also, of course, be sure to subscribe to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast player, so that way you don't miss an episode when we release them. And you can find SQPN on YouTube. Just search for SQPN and make sure to subscribe there and hit the bell to receive notifications for new episodes. You can also find previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back in 2 weeks where we will continue these character profiles by taking a deeper look into the Chosen One himself, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, his character. So until next time, Angela Cialana, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars.
It was strangely a pleasure to talk about Palpatine.
Mike Creevy, thank you for joining us this evening as well.
Always a pleasure.
And Andrew Hermes, thanks for joining us too.
Thanks for having me.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.